Tonight's shiur is called A Bird in the Hand, living the moment. A bird in the hand, like the saying goes, is worth two in the bush. I think that this is one of the most difficult dilemmas that we as human beings and also as believing Jews have. How to focus on the here and on the now, as opposed to worrying, fretting, being concerned, saving, spending an immense amount of energy on the future. Because by doing so, this disrupts our current, our today, our life, appreciating what we do have, appreciating our spouses, appreciating our children, concentrating and focusing on how to develop and how to establish and how to enjoy the families that we have and to bring them up properly. Because we're so concerned about the future, so concerned about the tomorrow, and how we have to save and how we have to do this and have to do that. Like the person who worked so hard to worked extra hours and denied himself time from the family in order to be able to build another room for the children, that each child can have their own bedroom. And finally, until he saved up that amount of money and built that extra room, the child grew up and moved out of the house. So what is there to be gained? If that is the case, and if this attitude is disruptive on the physical aspects, how much more so is this disruptive on the spiritual level? Meaning to say that our soul was brought down to this world and we have something to achieve, and the soul is eternal, and that which the soul achieves is eternal. We only live in this world for a set period of time. And the soul has to achieve whatever it needs to achieve, and that achievement is for eternity, is for always. And therefore, if it is disruptive for the body, so to speak, for us to not focus on the here and the now and always worry about the tomorrow, how much more is this the case when we neglect the spiritual dimension and our obligations and what we can achieve in the here and the now, and putting it away or pushing it off for tomorrow because we're so busy right now, and when I get to it, and when I retire, and when I'll have enough money, and when I'll have enough this, and when I have enough that, and who knows what tomorrow will bring, and who knows whether we'll be around, and who knows whether our health will allow, etc., etc. This is a dilemma on many, many fronts. One of the biggest dilemmas is, and this is something that I as a Jew grapple with, is the aspect of one's faith in God. On the one hand, you have to be able to be responsible. You have a family, you have to worry about the family, you have to be concerned about the family, you have to create some sort of safety net, so to speak, for yourself and for your family. But the more you fret and the more you worry about it, the less is an expression of your true faith in God. Firstly, there is no guarantees what our investments will bring, and we know that to be the case, and we don't need to elaborate on it. And secondly, by worrying about it, by being concerned about it, by putting all of our focus, it diminishes our spiritual achievements of what we have to achieve in this world, and it weakens our faith in God. There is nothing more powerful, nothing more greater than developing a true faith and a true belief in God. It gives you an equilibrium, it gives you a sense of serenity and a quality of life. The greater our faith in God, the greater our connection to God, the greater our bond to God, the more simple and the more peaceful our lives are. So how do we balance the two together? How do you create an equilibrium? That is a big dilemma. How do you, on the one hand, worry about your future, be concerned about your future, make savings for the future, yet show a faith, an unbelievable, powerful faith in God? That is a very big dilemma. And depending upon how we pitch it for ourselves will depend upon the type of life that we lead and we live and the relationship with God. and also to the extent of the living the moment, the living the here and now, and our attitude on how to relate to things that come up and to relate to it now. And this is what this shiur is about. There's a very interesting verse in Shir HaShirim, in the Song of Songs, that Shlomo HaMelech wrote in chapter 8, verse 7. And there, the previous verse speaks about this powerful love that the Jewish people have for God that is compared to a fiery flame. That is the previous verse. And the next verse he says, Ma'im rabim lo yichlu lechabot et ahava. And the Almighty, so to speak, bears testimony to his people that even if there is great waters, and even if there is great rivers, and here the commentaries explain this refers to turbulent times, the nations of the world that come and seek to submerge the nation of Israel, seek to subdue the nation of Israel, and seek to break its connection and its love to God. The verse says, Ma'im rabim, even if there's great waters, lo yichlu lechabot et ahava, will never be able to extinguish this love that the Jewish people have for God. And even if there were to be powerful nations that would come, they would never be able to submerge and drown out the love, the commitment, and the bond that the Jewish people have for God. Now listen to this last piece. If a person were to spend and squander all of the wealth of his house, be'ahava, because of this love, boz yavozu bo, they will surely be put to shame. The commentaries analyze this verse in different ways. There are those that say that he who will exchange this love, this commitment, this dedication for God, for wealth and for honor and the greatest amount of wealth, such a person will be shamed. Why? Because how can you exchange the love of God, the most powerful ingredient that we can ever have, for material things? Such a person will be put to shame. There's a book called Pele Yoetz. In chapter 1, he writes there is nothing greater than the love of God. Anybody who experienced true love knows that there is nothing more powerful than that. There's no amount of wealth, no amount of money that can buy that and can be traded for that. It's just, nothing is as strong as that, nothing is as powerful as that. And a fool would trade money for true love. So too, a person will be shamefaced if we're to trade his love of God for money, for wealth, or to be seduced by the environment or by the culture, etc. This is one interpretation. Another interpretation is that if a person would squander everything to achieve and to cultivate and to develop a true love of God through studying of Torah, through fulfilling the mitzvot, boz yabozu lo, everybody will be shamed before him. Nobody will be able to equate with such a person. There's an interesting midrash about this verse, an interesting story that the midrash, the sages tell us. And the story goes as follows. Rabbi Yochanan was an elderly scholar, one of the greatest scholars of Israel, and he was traveling from the city of Tiberia to the city of Tzipori. Tiberia is more of in a valley. Of course, Tiberia also has hills, but it comes down. And Tzipori is higher. It's more up on the mountains, like towards Tzfat. It's the north of Israel. And they were traveling together, and he was supported by his student, Rabbi Hiya, the son of Rabbi Abba. And as they were walking by, and he was supported by his student, he told him, you see this field of wheat? And he says, yes. He says, I used to own it, but I sold it, and I used the proceeds to study Torah. Nice. Then they were walking by, and they went further on, and they saw a vineyard. See this vineyard? I used to own it, but I sold it to use the proceeds to study Torah. And then they kept on walking further on, and finally they came to an olive grove, a big olive grove, a field full of olive trees. And he says, you see this olive grove? It's a good thing they didn't pass by a cemetery. You see this olive grove? I used to own it. But I sold it. That's my last field I sold to study Torah. Whereupon Rabbi Hiya, the son of Rab Abba, started to cry. And he said, why are you crying, my son? He said, because you have left nothing over for your old age. I'm concerned for you. I'm concerned you haven't left a superannuation. In those days, they didn't have a pension. And you don't have a superannuation. So what's going to be with you? So he started to cry out of love and concern for his elderly teacher. What's going on here? Why did Rabbi Yochanan sell his fields? Was it the wrong thing to do? Perhaps he didn't do the right thing by selling his field. Not leave something. Leave half an olive grove. Leave half a vineyard. Something. And if he did the right thing, then why did his disciple Rabbi Hiya cry? Herein lies two very powerful lessons. Rabbi Yochanan answered him, he says, why do you cry? Don't cry. He said, I made the best deal of my life. And he said, why? And he said, because the world was created in 6 days. God created the whole world with its vastness. Millions and billions of creatures exist in the world, and God created in 6 days. And the Torah was given and taught to Moshe Rabbeinu 40 days. I exchanged something cheap for something expensive. And you cry, and you are concerned, and you are worried. This is the best deal of my life. What was he telling him? What was he teaching him? I think here lies a very important lesson. First of all, the true value of Torah. The eternal value of Torah. That even God himself showed that the Torah is much more precious and much more valuable than all of the heavens and earth and all of the celestial beings. For the mere fact that God, so to speak, spent more time teaching and giving over the Torah than he did in creation of heaven and earth. And if you look at the world in that perspective, that will enable us to be able to live the moment a little bit better. And to seize opportunities of spirituality and spiritual gain a little bit better. To look at opportunities, to see, do I really need this? How many sages would work only until what they needed? There's a great sage who was the father of one of the greatest sages of Israel, the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, one of the great sages of Israel. And his father would only work until 12 on Shabbat afternoon. Shabbat afternoon, he would not work past 12. Came Shabbat afternoon, Friday, I beg your pardon. Friday at 11:55 came in a squire dressed in royal garb, and he used to sell material. And he says, listen, I have a wedding. I've got the bride, and I've got the bridesmaids, and I've got the aunties, and I've got the this, and I need this material, and this material, and this material. And he's looking at his watch, and he said, listen, I have no time. He said, what do you mean? I need this, and I need that. And making the story short, basically he says, listen, it's now 12 o'clock, come back another time. He says, no, if you don't sell it to me now, I'm not coming back. You know what this is? This will be the deal of your lifetime. You want to close? You want to close now? Here you'll be able to close for 2, 3, 5 months. A deal of your lifetime. Anyway, he says, look, I'm sorry, this is my policy, and you have to go. If you want to come back on Sunday, come back. You don't want. Closed the shop, went out. It was revealed to him that he was sent from heaven to test him. Do you stand by your principles, or do you seize other opportunities if there is a test? Here was a classic test. On the one hand, he had a principle that comes 12 o'clock, as is customary, if possible, that a person who should try and stop working by 12 o'clock on Friday in order to honor the Shabbat, to be able to go and have time to prepare for the Shabbat. Or he has an opportunity now to gain an immense amount for tomorrow. So do you seize the now or do you worry about the tomorrow? And he said, I was sent from heaven to see where you are at, what's your focus in life. And because you passed the test, you'll be blessed with a son that will bring light to the whole world. And that was Rabbi Moshe Isserles, one of the great scholars of Israel. He was born from that blessing. And many such stories abound. There are many people who would work only enough to earn what they needed for that day. Of course, you've got to go and work. But do you need to worry about tomorrow? Do you need to earn more than what tomorrow? If you do, that shows a lack of faith. Like the man, for 40 years, the man came day in, day out. Could not God give them a whole fridge stock of manna to last them 40 days? Every day they got to wake up. Every night they go to sleep. The warriors of the Jewish people, warriors, not the warriors with the warrior, but the warriors, those who worry all night, couldn't sleep. Why couldn't they sleep? Will the man fall tomorrow? Will the man not fall tomorrow? Will we have what to eat? Will I have to go and spend my money and buy food from the neighbors? Will I have to go and work? And they couldn't sleep. The believers had a nice restful sleep. Where do we fall in that scheme of things? Many people went to work. They worked only what they needed for that day. They made a vessel. They understood that God sustains all mankind. And all you need to do is the barest minimum. And then go back to your life, go back to your here and to your now. And to focus on what's important. This is what Rabbi Yohanan was teaching us. Rabbi Yohanan was teaching us to focus on the here and the now. Everything, God's blessing and sustenance that will come to you will be totally dependent upon your level of faith. In accordance with your level of faith, will be how God will show you and bring you your sustenance. If your level of faith is weak, then you have to save, like everybody else. And not necessarily will that saving stand you in good stead. There was one time, two people who had an inheritance. One was a warrior and one didn't care. He was an easygoing, happy-go-lucky fellow. And in those days, they didn't have banks. So he figured, I can't keep my inheritance in the house. Someone may steal it. So he took 10 steps past this tree, the oak tree, to the right, and 10 steps to the left, and he measured the steps, and he drew a map, and he dug a hole in the night, and he buried it, and that's it. The other guy who made the inheritance also did the same thing. What am I going to keep all this money over here? I'll bury it. If I need it, I need it. If I don't need it, I don't need to look at it now. I would have to worry about it. If I need it, I'll use it. So he went 10 steps, that tree, that tree, dug a hole, buried it. The first guy was a warrior. And he was so worried that someone saw him. Maybe perhaps someone saw him and followed him. And I heard that he had an inheritance, was following him around with binoculars. And he couldn't sleep all night. He woke up and he took 10 steps here, 10 steps there, 10 steps there. And all of a sudden he digs a hole and he sees it's gone and he starts to cry and mourn and this and that. Little did he know that he missed it by 2 steps. And the treasure was there all along, but he was mourning and crying, and then life to him was miserable. Every day, what I lost. In the meantime, he's got a comfortable living. In the meantime, he can live and he doesn't. The other guy, the happy-go-lucky guy, 10 steps here, 10 steps there. Someone happens to see him. Someone followed him. And someone stole the money. But since he was a happy-go-lucky guy, he never worried about it. He never needed it. It didn't worry him. And he never went to check whether it's there or not there. And he lived his life. And he ended up not even needing that big treasure, that big windfall that God gave him. This is the important lesson that we learned from Rabbi Yohanan. You have to seize the moment. And you have to know and make a calculation in your life. What is the most important thing in my life? And an opportunity comes your way, you have to calculate. Will I then miss out an opportunity, an eternal opportunity, an opportunity of an act of spirituality, or going to a shiur, or giving a charity, or going to a minyan, or this or that, for temporal things that are perhaps I'm worried about the tomorrow, or I have to worry about this, and then when I retire, and then after whatever and this and whatever that, I will get time and I will get around to doing it. So what was then the attitude of Rabbi Hiya bar Abba? Why did he cry? That's the right approach. That's the Jewish approach. As much as we can humanly achieve, that is our goal, that is our objective. It takes a lot of effort to get there, but that's the objective. Rabbi Yochanan lived by it, and guess what? He was happy, and he was successful, and he never was missing a morsel of bread. A bit more bread, a bit less bread. Tuna spread, olives, that doesn't worry him. I think that Rabbi Hiya bar Abba was perhaps speaking to us. Speaking to the regular guy. And the regular guy is not holding by that level. Meaning to say that perhaps we should worry to a certain degree. But we should also bear in mind the first half of the story of the attitude of Rabbi Yochanan. There was a difference of opinion in Gemara Masechet Brachot between Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and Rabban Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai would say if a person would spend his whole time plowing the field and sowing and harvesting and reaping, Torah mati alea, what's the Torah going to be with the Torah? He advocated absolute pure faith in God and focus on the spiritual dimensions of our existence. Rabban Gamliel preached to the average guy, and he would tell him like this: listen, twice a year for one full month each, which is 2 months, they used to have what's called Yad Chekala, the month of where people would gather, the community would gather, and they would study Torah. And he says, B'metut minach, I ask of you, don't come before me in the months of the harvest and in the months of the sowing and the reaping, etc. Because he wanted people to be self-sufficient. He wanted people to be self-reliant and not needing of charity, not needing of others. Harbe asu Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the Gemara tells us, many tried to do like Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, v'lo alta biyadam, and they weren't successful. Many tried like Rabban Gamliel, many tried to do like Rabban Gamliel, and they were successful. Meaning to say that there are two aspects of our faith in God. We have to be able to try and always lean towards the attitude of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai as much as we can push ourselves to get there. And as much as we push ourselves to get there, will indicate and will reveal the level of our faith in God and also the blessing that God would give us. If you're looking for riches, if you're looking for excess, that's something else. There's no promise. God didn't ever promise excess. God promised to feed us, to house us, to clothe us, to sustain us, in order for us to be able to fulfill our true objective in this world, our true existence in this world. You want excess? Then you have to know that it comes in expense of something. You're going to give up something, and that giving up something will be the spiritual pursuits that is eternal, that is everlasting. So what Rabbi Yochanan taught us was, he who shows sacrifice for Torah and for mitzvot, he who shows and expresses a great belief in God, the Almighty will reward his faith. Like in the desert where the Almighty gave the man every single day in its time to the Jewish people. The Midrash says that when Rabbi Yochanan passed away, the community read out the verse in Shir HaShirim, of which I started the shiur, that Im yiten ish et kol hon beto, if a person will give all of the wealth of his house be'ahava, because of the love of God, boz yabozu lo, everybody will stand in shame and in awe because of him. And they apply the verse to Rabbi Yochanan. This is a second interpretation of the verse, that people will stand in awe and will be shamefaced before such a person was able to be successful in living this world, feed his family, clothe his family, and yet live a spiritual life because of his great level of faith in God. Another very important lesson that we can learn from this is that it is preferred by the sages to choose a humble present than a glamorous future. What does that mean? So the sages tell us, different books, the worst possible present is better than the best and shining future. In other words, if you have a choice to choose between the present, doing something right now, even if it's small, even if it's humble, a small act of charity. Oh, why should I give charity now? I'll save my money. I won't give charity now. I'll save my money. I will invest. I'll put it in a fund. It'll earn 10, 12, 15%. In 45 years, I'll be able to give this poor fella, I'll be able to, instead of giving him $5 so he can buy a meal, I'll be able to give him $2,000. Better give him the $5, besides the fact that in 45 years, who knows whether he'll be here, who knows whether you'll be here, and for sure the bread won't be here. Give him now. Give him the $5 now, better than planning and thinking that in 54 years I'll be able to give him $1,000. I'll be able to give charity, I'll be able to give more charity. No, do it now. Grab it now like Rabbi Yohanan, he grabbed now. He had a field and he wanted to study Torah when he was young. What's going to be in the future? Grab it now. He could have said, well, if I keep the field, then I'll be able to buy another field. And this field, it's like the chicken. If I keep the egg, I won't eat today. I keep the egg will hatch another chicken. The chicken will have, and then I'll buy a goat, the milk, and I'll have 50 goats, and this and that until such time. And the person was dreaming all of these things, what he can do with this egg. I won't eat the egg now, I'll save the egg. And whilst he was walking in the street thinking, what's he going to do with the egg and how much money, the egg dropped. He didn't have not the egg, not the chicken, and not the goats, and not the fields, and not nothing. You got an egg now? Take it. Make breakfast for your children. This is what Rabbi Yohanan teaches us. He could have thought, if I keep the field, I'll be a millionaire, and then not only me, and I'll be able to sustain 10 students, all of us together, sitting in the yeshiva from the field. He sold this field. And when he needed to sell another field because he ran out, he sold the other field. And when he needed to sell this field because he ran out, he sold that other field. And he was okay. Because he showed sacrifice, God took care of him. Better you forego a wonderful future that you've planned, an unbelievable deal, an unbelievable scenario, set of circumstances that you thought for the future. Forgo all of that for a small, measly, whatever it is, a shiur on Torah, whatever it is. Why is that the case? Because our nature is to sacrifice the now for a doubtful tomorrow. That's our nature, that's human nature. We'll sacrifice the now because tomorrow, the next day, I'll be able to do this now, and I'll be able to do this now, and because in the future, I'll be able to do more and greater. That's human nature. We worry about tomorrow and we don't live in the now, in the present. So what happens is that we lose today and not necessarily do we gain the tomorrow. This is the way of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. How does he achieve what he needs to do? How does he lure us to spend a lifetime on unnecessary things, on accumulating things that we don't need, spending time, I'll have a bit of leisure now, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll go and do a little bit of this, I have to do this and I have to do that, and I'll go on the internet now because it was just something in the news, I have to listen to the news, but right after that, I'll listen to a shiur, or I'll this, or I'll study. And what ends up happening? We lose it. Why? Because the manner that the evil inclination works is he grabs your now. He makes you lose your today. And what happens? Tomorrow becomes tomorrow's today. And therefore the Yetzer Hara will come and make you lose the tomorrow's today. And every day's tomorrow becomes tomorrow's today, and you lose that tomorrow. So what have you gained? You haven't gained today's today, and you've lost tomorrow's tomorrow. And that is the way of the Yetzer Hara. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov would say a very interesting thing, that the evil inclination would come and try and disturb him while he's putting on tefillin. How did he overcome the evil inclination? By saying, why are you bothering me? I'm just putting on tefillin today. Let me concentrate on this mitzvah today. And every day he would overcome the evil inclination. When you come with big plans, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and achieve this and achieve that, you don't necessarily achieve it. But if you come and battle the Yetzer Hara of today and you overcome your weaknesses today, then chances are you'll be able to do that tomorrow and the next day as well. There's a very interesting Gemara in Masechet Eruvin, page 54. Amar le Rav Huna. Rav said to Rav Huna, Im yesh lach, if you have something now, hetev lach, go and do it. Go and do that good deed now. You got a bit of money, you got an opportunity to give charity, go and do it now. And he gave 4 compelling, powerful messages. And he says like this, She'en b'she'ol ta'anug, because in the grave, there's no pleasure. You can't take anything with you to the grave. So you got an opportunity to do something good now, something that is eternal now. You got an opportunity to use this money to go and study Torah. You got an opportunity to go and buy a beautiful pair of tefillin, or do a mitzvah, or help another person, or give charity. Give it now. Don't plan what's going to be tomorrow and the next day and the next day, because you can't take it with you to the grave. No, I'm saving, I'll need, because I want to have this and I want to have that and I want to have new furniture and I'm planning to buy this and I'm planning to buy that. Because in the grave there is no pleasure. That's one thing he told him. Now listen to this. And there is no delaying the day of death. Nobody can delay the day of death. And you don't know when that will be. You have an opportunity to live in the here and now and do something powerful, something moving, something compelling, something meaningful. Do it now. Don't throw that opportunity. Because if you miss the opportunity and you will have the leftovers, you can't take it with you. And who said even that you'll be able to last that long? To enjoy what you thought you're planning to enjoy. Another thing he told them. V'im tomar aniach lebanai hok b'she'ol. I want to be able to leave it for my children. I want from my grave to feed my children. In other words, after I go, I want to leave. They should be comfortable. There should be this. Mi agid lach. Who has any guarantees for you? Who told you that your money will stay or will remain? Who told you? And then he said another interesting thing. Man is like a fickle piece of grass. Sometimes the blades are green on this one. This blade is green. Sometimes that one is dry. And grass very quickly changes around. Sometimes that which was dry and looked dead to you, all of a sudden comes to life. And that one which looked so green and looked so good died and became dry. So there's no guarantees. And the truth is, the sages tell us that every single child is born with the bread in his mouth. Meaning to say that every child is born, he has his mazal and he has his parnasah already allocated for him. So here you're worried about leaving for this and leaving for this and leaving for this. And who says that this will enrich their life anyway? And who says this will bring them happiness anyway? And who says it'll even last? Who guarantees? So you have an opportunity to do something that is powerful, do it now. There's a joke, I don't remember where I heard it, but about a guy, he comes to a wealthy person and he says, can you help the yeshiva? Can you help the synagogue? He says, no, I can't help because I've got to worry about my kids. I'm working very hard and I'm saving for my kids that they should have. He says, okay. Then he comes to him and says, how about coming to a shiur? He says, no, I can't. I'm too busy earning. I have to earn because I have to save for my kids. Okay, this man dies. And the rabbi goes to the kid and he says, how about donating to the yeshiva? He says, no, I can't. I have to save for my kid. He says, okay, how about coming to the shiur? He says, no, I can't. I'm busy on Wednesday night. I have to go and save for my kid. Nobody ever saw that kid. Where was that kid? Nobody ever saw him because someone is saving for some kid. Who's that kid? Nobody knows. And generations go by for that so-called kid, but nobody saw him. There's an interesting Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf, page 100. And it says, Al tatzar tzarat mahar. Don't worry about a worry of tomorrow. Ki lo teda ma yeled yom. Because you don't know what today will bring. What opportunities today will bring. How circumstances could change. What are you worried about tomorrow? Shema lemahar ba, for perhaps tomorrow comes, ve'enenu, and he's not around. Ve'nimtza mitzta'er le'olam she'enenu, and this person is worried about a world that never came. And that's why the pasuk says in the Shema, we say this every day, Asher anuchim etzavecha hayom, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul. Asher anuchim etzavecha hayom, shall do the mitzvot. Asher anuchim etzavecha hayom, which I command you today. Now I'm saying this today. When was the Torah given? 3,500 years ago. How can I say today when God gave the Torah 3,500 years ago? Keep the commandments that I have commanded you. The literal translation is, keep the commandments that I commanded you today, then, on that day. But God is speaking to us as much as He spoke to the generation that received the Torah 3,500 years ago. And the sages teach us to view this verse as God commands us today, to worry about today, and to think about today, and to achieve what you need to achieve today. And this is a big mistake that the princes of Israel did. When God commanded the Jewish people to show that God forgave the Jewish people for the sins of the golden calf, God commanded the Jewish people to make donations, contributions, by which Moshe Rabbeinu will build a sanctuary for the presence of God to reside. Now the princes of Israel, the leaders of Israel, what should they have done? Show the way. Show an example. What did they give first? Show an example. What did they do? They said like this. And you tell me whether they were right or wrong. They said, let's see what the people give. Any shortfall, we'll fulfill the shortfall. Good? Good. If someone comes up to me and says, Rabbi, what do you need? You need a new hall? You need a new kindergarten? Go and collect. Whatever the shortfall is, I'll cover. $2 million, I collected 75 cents. No matter what I collect, I know that he's going to give me the shortfall. Ala kefak. That's what I would say. Great. I've got a backup. I've got an anchor. I don't have to worry. I'll do whatever I can. 75 cents, $75, $75,000, doesn't matter. He's got a bad deal and I got the good deal. Right? Wrong. The Torah chastises them. And the Torah says they didn't do the right thing. And guess what ended up happening? Because of the great love and the appreciation that the Jewish people had for the fact that God wants to draw His presence amongst the camp of Israel, and that v'shachanti betocham, and He will dwell amongst them and build for me a sanctuary, there was such an abundance, there was a surplus. Came, and you know what happened with this? Every donation, you gave silver and you gave gold and it was used in every aspect of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. I walk into the Mishkan, hey, there's a piece of me there. There's a piece of my donation there. And I'm there as well. I'm there. I'm all part of it. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing. Came the Nesiim. What are we going to donate? We don't have the merit now. And that's it. Gamarnu, khalas. I've got nothing to, if I want to give even, I got nothing. I have no part in the Mishkan. What a sad thing, how sad they were. And they were chastised and criticized for that. You want to give, if there's anything missing, that's fine. But give now. You have an opportunity. Who knows what will be tomorrow? Give now. Who says that that tomorrow cancels out the now? Worry about the now. Give now. Do what you do now. Show an example now. Give powerfully now. You have good intentions. If there's still a shortfall after you gave, then you want to fulfill the shortfall. Beautiful. When the Mishkan was erected, it says immediately. So what were they left? They were left with donations of the breastplate of the stones. They brought that. Nice. Beautiful. But guess what? That's only one item. Who would not want every aspect of a synagogue to have his name, so to speak, to have his merit there? In the Sefer Torah, yep, I've got a portion in the Sefer Torah. In the Echal, I've got a portion there. In the Teva, in the Sidur, in the Mahzor, in the Tehillim, I've got a portion there. In the seat, I've got the electricity, I've got a portion everywhere. I'm covered. They had one thing and one thing only. If one stone falls, disappears, that's it. Gamarna, your donation's gone. That's why when the tabernacle was erected, they quickly went and gave donations of the oxen and of the agalot, of the wagons, etc. straight away. They didn't ask any questions. You need, you don't need, what do you need, how much you need, I'll give later, straight away, to rectify that sin. So we see what the attitude of Torah is, that as much as our belief system allows, and we must develop and expand it as much as possible, to live in the here and to live in the now, and to seize an opportunity when we have it, an opportunity of eternity. I have very moved by stories that I've read about people, for example, after the Holocaust or during the Holocaust. People gave every ounce, every cent, every dollar that they have to save. Maybe there's even a chance, not for sure, maybe there's a chance that they can save someone from the Holocaust. Go and petition this one and give money here, and they spend money and they petition this senator and that senator, and then they spend everything that they had and they mortgage their homes in order to save. I am awestruck by that. Who does these things? But what a powerful thing that they neglected the tomorrow, so to speak, like Rabbi Yohanan. They didn't worry. They sold the field today to be able to save a life today, of which stood them and for generations and generations of generations. You save one life, it's them, it's their children and children's children. I don't know what any of you saw, but they were sending around a clip of some guy who saved some people, who took people in, children, in England, I think it was. And he was invited to some show, and he didn't know what he was over there, and they told his story, and suddenly all of the people who were saved stood up. What a touching and moving thing. What a touching and moving thing. And every single one of us can do something like that. There's an interesting story about a great scholar in Israel. His name is Rav Asher Weiss. Rav Asher Weiss, his father went through the Holocaust, and this father of his lost his mother, lost his father, and just him and his brother survived. He was in Auschwitz, and there in Auschwitz he met one of the great scholars of Israel at that time, the Rebbe of Tzanz. And he stuck to him, and he cleaved to him. And he himself was a great scholar, this young man who was about 17 years old. After the Holocaust, they survived the Holocaust, the Rebbe of Tzanz made an announcement. He himself barely had any clothes. He himself were still starving. Their bodies were still bones and skeletons. He made an announcement that who will come and help me to come and bury the dead. There was bodies all over. Wherever you drove, those bodies. All over Europe. They got a jeep from the American Army and a driver, and nobody wanted to volunteer. I can understand. Everybody had their own broken families, their own broken homes, their own broken dreams. They were trying to find relatives. Who volunteered? Rav Moshe Weiss, the father of Asher Weiss. And for a year and a half, they were burying the dead. For a year and a half. After the Holocaust, they went to America, and together him with the Tzanz, the Rebbe of Tzanz, they built mikvaot and schools and this and that and this and that. By the way, after the burying of the dead, after all of that, the Rebbe told him, is there any request that you have? And he said, I have a request. And the request is that my children will be Talmidei Chachamim, will be Torah scholars. And he said, I bless you that your children will illuminate the world. I don't know how many children he had, but I at least know one of them. One of them is a outstanding scholar who knows every aspect of the Torah. Today he's one of the famous scholars in Israel. And he says a story about his father, that after the war, for a year and a half after the war, they started to rebuild Judaism and collect money for schools and mikvah and this and that, etc. A year and a half later, he goes to the Rebbe of Tzanz and says, Rebbe, I think I've done my share. I've given 3 years, hard work. I haven't opened a Gemara in 2 years. I haven't studied, I haven't had time from morning to night. And he himself was a phenomenal scholar. He was a genius. And the Rebbe frowned upon him and he says, you know nothing about self-sacrifice. You think self-sacrifice is sacrificing your food, your bed at night, your efforts, your money. That's not self-sacrifice. When you sacrifice your world to come, when you sacrifice the serenity of studying Torah for someone else, that's sacrifice. It goes without saying that he stayed with his Rebbe and he continued to build. I'm jealous of people who have such opportunities that they seized and they gave up everything, even the spiritual pursuits. I'm jealous of such people. And the Torah loads such people and compliments such people. And these people remain forever a part of the history of the Jewish people. And I want to tell you a very interesting story. The story is in Gemara in Masechet Baba Batra, in page 11, about King Munbaz. If you came to the shiur just to hear that name, put a smile on your face, that's enough. Munbaz HaMelech. You know who Munbaz HaMelech was? Beautiful name, I like it. Sounds like some character from the science fiction. Munbaz. He was actually a Jewish king. And he was from the family of Hashmonaim, the famous miracle of Hanukkah that happened with the Hashmonai family. They were priests. And they were the ones that led the way against the Maccabees. They led the way against the Hellenists. What ends up happening was that they and their children and children's children led the Jewish people, even though they weren't of the tribe of Judah, of King David. But because they showed such sacrifice and they had such leadership skills, they were kings of Israel for about the period about 300 to 400 years. Until the destruction of the temple. I want to tell you something about Munbaz HaMelech, King Munbaz. The Gemara tells us that there was a famine in Israel, and Munbaz was king at the time, and he had a great treasure house full of golds and silver and treasures that him and his father's father, and for many decades, saved as kings do, because you need treasury, because if you need to make a war, you need to pay the soldiers. If you need to build a road, you need a treasury. The greater the treasury, the more powerful your kingdom is. And for the future. Munbaz, king, took all of the treasure and spent it all on feeding the people. And his brothers and his uncles, it says, all of his family chastised him. He said, what are you doing? It is the way of kings to add to the treasure of his predecessors, not to subtract. The first king, let's say he won a war and he got the spoils of war. And the next one took the next spoils of war, and he added. Your role as king is to add, not to subtract. And you subtract. And not only you subtract, you spend it all. So Munbaz answered them like this: I am better than my predecessors in 6 ways. And he says as follows: they stored below in this world, which is a fleeting world. They saved, they put it in the bank, but this world is a fleeting world. I, my storage, my treasure is above a world that exists forever. Number 2, he told them they stored in a place where it could be robbed, pillaged. If a king comes and conquers, that can be taken away. It can be taken away in a second. Whereas where I've stored it, nobody can take it away. When a Jew does a mitzvah, nobody can ever take that away from you. One time, I think it was some Montefiore. The queen asked Montefiore, what is your value? What are you worth? So he took out a pencil and he took out a pad. He didn't have an iPhone in those days. And he started to write, and he gave a calculation, and he gave it to her. He was a very wealthy man. Let's say he was worth in the 100 million, and he made a calculation, and he gave her a figure, something in the vicinity of 10 million, for example. She looked at it, and she started to laugh. He says, what, are you kidding me? Everybody knows you're worth more than that. What, are you pretending? He says, no, that's what I'm worth. He says, what do you mean? Just your mansion, just this, just that is worth more than this. And he said, you asked what I'm worth. This is what I'm worth. This is what I gave away to charity. That nobody can touch. What I have today, it could be gone. That's not what I truly have. What I truly have is not what I have today, because that could be gone tomorrow. What I truly have is what I gave away. And that can never be taken away from me. That's what I have. That remains forever. That's what Munbaz, King Munbaz said. The third thing he said, they stored something that bears no fruit. I have invested in something that bears fruit. I have saved lives, I have saved people, their children and their children's children. And as it says, that when a person does a mitzvah, it bears fruit for him in the world to come. The fourth thing, they stored and invested in material world. I invested in the souls, in life. I saved people's lives. I saved people's souls. The fifth thing he said, they stored for others. Like we know, you store and they store, and who ends up enjoying it? The children. And the children's children. And I stored for myself. What I gave, I will benefit. They stored in this world, and I stored in the world to come. So this is the important lesson that we learned from Rabbi Yohanan, from Munbaz, from so many who taught us how to expand our faith in God to the extent that we really don't need as much as we think that we need or pretend that we need, and spend a lifetime acquiring it for what? And what have we lost in the meantime? We've lost the opportunity to seize the moment, to live with our families, to enjoy what we have. We don't really need that much. How much can you, I told one time one of my kids, how much can you eat? You can only eat a certain amount at one time, even if you wanted to. How many pancakes can you eat? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't eat 1,000 pancakes. Not today, and not tomorrow, and not the next day. You can't. But what you can do is another act of kindness. What you can do is another piece of learning. What you can do is another mitzvah. And this lasts you forever. And this is what our focus should be. And this is what we learned from Rabbi Yohanan. You must grab the here and you must grab the now and value the true power of Torah and mitzvot that endures forever, as opposed to the wrongful focus that we have always of materialism that really doesn't last longer than today.